most of the people that train to be indoor cycling spin instructors think it's a lot easier than it is. Teaching indoor cycling well is one of the toughest forms of group exercise. You're a PT, you're a coach, you're a DJ, you're a lighting designer. You're having to be aware of everything that's going on at the room. And then also, before you even get to the class, there's hours of scientific programming to make it into a really, really well-rounded group exercise class. And then you've also got to think, there's going to be people coming to this class who are terrified. So you've got to have something there for everyone. When people go, okay, wow, now I can see how much there is to learn, those are the ones that always go on to do well.
Welcome to the latest edition of Adeptus On-Air. And today we have a special guest in Melissa Power, who is one of the world's leading spin trainers, the trainer of trainers, I like to say here. And I want to get some insight just on that. There has to be some nuances to teaching people who already kind of know the space and know what they're doing. So what are some of the smaller, finer details that help you become, the trainer of trainers?
It's a really interesting question, because actually most of the people that train to be indoor cycling spin instructors think it's a lot easier than it is. And I've actually had to, I wouldn't say dumb down, but I've had to really kind of think about, wow, okay, so how can I make this accessible, achievable, and also something that they still remain passionate about without saying, there's a lot to take in here. So do you know what? You used a word that I use a lot, which is nuanced. Mm-hmm. And it's such a good word, because it really, really is. It's finding that balance between keeping people involved and excited, but also saying to them, this is tough. This is really tough, and it's going to require a lot of hard work. And you can see straight away the ones that go, okay, I get that this is going to be hard, because teaching indoor cycling well is one of the toughest forms of group exercise. You're a PT, you're a coach, you're a DJ, you're a lighting designer. You're having to be aware of everything that's going on at the room. And then also, before you even get to the class, there's hours of scientific programming to make it into a really, really well-rounded group exercise class. And then you've also got to think, there's going to be people coming to this class who are terrified. So you've got to have something there for everyone. And when people go, okay, wow, now I can see how much there is to learn, those are the ones that always go on to do well.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. And something I'm curious about, and something I'm sure you have to teach your trainers, they probably have questions about, is you don't know everyone's level in the class before you begin, I would assume. Some may be very high level, some may be in the middle, some may need to keep up. How do you manage, as one person, how do you manage all different levels of the class to make sure they all kind of stay engaged and stay involved?
Firstly, can I just say, would you like to come and work for my studio? Because that is something that even some experienced instructors don't get. And you've asked such an intelligent question there, because what the majority of indoor cycling instructors are doing is they are deciding what they want to do. They're getting up on the stage, they are performing. And they're not taking into account that these people, you might have Jane from accounts who's got 4 kids. You might have a triathlete there. You might have someone who's just tried it for the first time. And what has happened, especially since COVID, is the majority of indoor cycling instructors have become performers, and they have somehow left along the way that they are coaches. And what's lacking, and what I'm a huge fan of, is empathy. So what we do at my studio, and the way that I coach instructors, is to say there are lots of different ways to do this. The first one is you always plan for the beginners and then you build on that. So you offer something that you know everyone can do. Then you look at the class and you think, right, can everyone do that? Right. Let's move it up a level. And then if you move it up a level and even one person can't do that level, then I wouldn't move it up again, because I wouldn't want that one person to leave thinking, I couldn't do it, because no one else thinks that. They just think, look how good I look.
Yeah, that's true.
And when it comes to the power side of cycling, it's all about offering levels. So whether that's gears, whether that's what outputs, you're always saying, here is your RPM, here are your gear ranges, and here is your corresponding intensity. So you might sit in my class and, this is a little technical, but I might go 85 RPM and I want it to feel 6 out of 10. So you'll go, great. Okay, for me, that's gear 13. Somebody else might go, wow, I've never even been on a bike before. My gear 8, is that intensity. So I always say with coaching, the more information you can deliver, the better results you'll get. I always think, is there any question that anyone could ask me at this point? And if there is, let me answer it in advance.
Yep.
Really good question.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And that's really good insight. Thank you for the great answer. I think I appreciate it. I'm sure the audience will appreciate that as well. What is your origin story? How did you get into this particular area of fitness?
Okay, here we go. I'll try and keep it fairly brief. My previous career was in TV. I was a TV producer. I worked originally in quiz and game shows. Then I moved into entertainment. Do you have catchphrase in the States?
Catchphrase as a TV show?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound.
You're guessing the phrases. We have surprise, surprise. These are all kind of very UK entertainment shows. But I worked on a lot of those shows, and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't enjoying it that much. And at the same time as working there, I got knocked off my bike. I was in a really bad road traffic accident. I broke my leg, my arm. They thought I'd broken my back, my nose.
Wow.
I know. And to rehab, I started doing indoor cycling classes. Mm-hmm. And I loved them so much. I mean, this is confidence, isn't it? But I loved them so much. I thought, you know what? I want to teach that.
Yeah.
Which when you look back, it's like, wow, that was but I knew that I could do it. And I think perhaps the TV background of being able to story tell and being able to program and plan and having that, like I go back to that empathy, really, really helped. So yeah, while I was sort of rehabbing, started teaching, got my certificate, and from there taught consecutively with my day job. But I'd be going to work thinking, I can't wait to finish so I can go and teach. And I'd be going and teaching at 6 a.m. in Soho and then going to work and then teaching afterwards and thinking, hang on a minute, the bit in the middle is not what I'm enjoying. And it was also a big part of that was thinking, I want to work for myself. I was always sort of very business minded. And I thought, when you work for someone else, especially in an industry that you're not that passionate about, you're only going to go so far. Yeah. And I knew that I needed to sort of harness my passion and turn it into something that could evolve and didn't have a lid on it. So I made the decision to quit my day job, and I thought, I'll give it a year and I'll give it everything I have. And if at the end of the year it hasn't worked, I know I can go back to TV. But it worked. And I taught in pretty much everywhere you can think of it in London. And that led to me noticing that there was a big lack of education amongst teachers, and the variety of teaching and the standard of teaching, that it was very up and down, very all over. So I was looking what was out there, and there wasn't anything that taught people how to teach. There were certifications that would qualify you, but it would be the very basics, like just explain the bike screen. And you'd have people coming out of these like big kind of name certificates going, hang on a minute, I don't actually know how to teach a class. So I spent probably the toughest 6 months of my life. I'd say harder than my degree, harder than any exams I'd ever done, writing this certificate.
Wow.
I sort of remember sitting up really late at night and just like making sure everything was perfect. And I did it all by myself because I was just determined to kind of launch it. And from there, we've certified 600 instructors.
Wow. Wow. That's from beginning to end. That's such an amazing story of, hardship with an accident and overcoming and then triumph and then turning that into a positive and that becoming a passion. That's amazing. I did not know that full backstory, Melissa. That's amazing. And if I can, because I don't want to, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I want to know, like, when did the accident happen? How did it happen? I mean, it sounds like it was pretty severe. And like, how was the rehab process of that?
Yeah, it was, so my goodness, 17 years ago.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm fine now. I've got a metal bar in my arm, which limits a few things, like if I weight train, but it's fine. So yeah, I was cycling because I've always loved cycling,
Yeah.
down a road, and a car hit me from 50 miles an hour from behind. And I just remember
Wow.
going up in the air, landing on the wing mirror, or
Oh,
the front of the car, bouncing off the wing mirror, and then like ending up on the side of the road. And actually, I think someone said that I got up and like walked from the middle of the road to the sort of bank in the middle, which, given that I had a broken leg, should have been impossible. But I think it shows you what adrenaline can do. Because I just
yep.
remember thinking, my God, these cars are going so fast, I have to get out the way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Wow.
got out of the way, and then this was luck. There was a paramedic walking past who was on their day
Wow.
off.
Wow.
um,
What are the odds of that? Just what you needed at
I
that very
know.
moment in life. Wow.
Serendipity. So yeah, got rushed to hospital. Had operations on my. I think they operated on my wrist pretty much straight away because everything was just smashed to bits. And then was in hospital for ages. It was a long recovery, and at the time I was living in the north of England in a place called Manchester, and my family and I now live down back in London. But I remember my parents just wanted to go, we're going to come and get you, because it was like, I think it took about a month before I could even like get off the sofa,
Wow.
it was definitely, but now I know this sounds corny, but in a way I am glad it happened, because before
Yeah.
that, for the first 20 years of my life, I didn't exercise, wasn't
Mhm.
interested, didn't. I bunked off PE at school. I was into like music and choirs and orchestras, and kind of went down the sort of, at school it was very much you're either creative or sporty,
I
and
see.
I definitely went down the creative route. But I know it sounds corny, but I'm in a way I'm glad it happened, because it meant that I discovered exercise, which is
Yeah.
now such a massive part of my life.
Yeah. Wow. What a journey. That's amazing. I'm astounded and happy. Obviously, everything worked out. But that's amazing. What are some of the health benefits with spin? I'm sure a lot of the audience is probably curious about that. With spin specifically versus things that a lot of people do, like treadmills and other forms of cardio.
Well,
What
now
are some of the
I am very biased, clearly, obviously, but
no, good.
scientifically, it's the safest form of group exercise out there. An
Hmm.
example: I taught 4 days before giving birth, and then I was back on the bike 6 weeks afterwards.
Wow.
Unlike something like running or high intensity classes, it's much gentler on your knees. And
Mhm.
it taught safely and taught correctly, it's hugely beneficial for your muscles, because indoor cycling is a combination of cardio and strength. And what you find a lot with running, although it's fantastic for your aerobic system, for your anaerobic system, you can train VO2 max, you can train all your different zones, but it's not making you particularly stronger. because you're not pushing against anything. You're just pounding the streets. There's no element of increasing resistance or pushing against something. And that's why a lot of runners come to indoor cycling saying, I've actually, my cardio is great, but my legs aren't strong, or my knees are hurting. Now, I don't know, nearly as much about running as I do indoor cycling. And I'm sure there are, safe ways to do it. But I think that a lot of the time with stuff like running or high intensity classes, people just go, I'm just going to run a marathon,
Yeah. Yep. That's true.
I'm just going to set off and see how far I can get. And again, I think COVID kind of forced people into that, and often unsafely. Indoor cycling is a mixture of cardio and strength. And what you're able to do is control your resistance. And a good teacher will create and curate the perfect balance of both of those types of training. Because when you're training, you need to access different zones. And in order for us to strength train, now an example of that might be standing up on the bike with a heavy resistance, climbing up a hill. Now, what you need to balance that out is then 3 minutes of recovery. Now, whether you do that just in the saddle, whether you do that with some rhythm work, however you do that, what you're doing with indoor cycling is letting your body recover between the strength training parts. Whereas with something like HIIT training or running, you're just pounding nonstop. And what happens is your bones and your joints start to feel the effects of that. I know so many people who have gone, God, I wish I'd looked after my knees a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's also accessible for every age. We've got people who are 70, 80, 75 that come to my studio. It's just because you can choose just to sit down if you want to. I always say to people in their first class, it's a bonus if you stand up, sit down, enjoy the music. And you can be completely in control. And I think a lot of people, I have to remember, because I love exercise, that a lot of people really don't. And getting people to exercise is a huge hurdle. So when you get someone in the room, if that form of exercise is accessible and not scary, they're more likely to come back. And I think that's a big part of indoor cycling. Taught safely and correctly, it isn't intimidating. When it's not taught well, it is intimidating. And that's the side of indoor cycling that gives it a bad name.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. You explained that so eloquently. I appreciate that. Because me coming in as a novice, not knowing much about cycling, is really helpful for me. I got this next question off of doing some research off your social media, and I thought it was an interesting question. Maybe you can explain this. The question was, does spin give you bulky legs or, tree trunk legs? But I'm sure it may not be as, detriment for a male, but I'm sure most women don't want bulky legs from cycling.
If spin gave you bulky legs, then I would be entering some sort of bodybuilding competition. And it's safe to say I am not. No, it doesn't. Very simple answer. It does not give you bulky legs. If you look at the Tour de France cyclists, if you look at Pogacar, I mean, that man, he weighs about 5.5 stone. But it doesn't. It's physically impossible. If you look at the big cyclists, so if you look at Chris Hoy when he was in his, velodrome era, and his legs, that didn't come from cycling. That came from huge amounts of strength training to activate those fast twitch muscle fibers. And that's what you need to sprint around velodrome. Most people don't do that type of exercise. So if you look at the average person that comes to an indoor cycling class, like, I don't talk about calorie burn because I think it's irrelevant. And I think there are much more positive ways to embrace exercise. We talk about being strong, being powerful, training for longevity, training so that you can pick your kids up and walk up the stairs without, having to take a break. Yeah. Having said that, indoor cycling is essentially an exercise that burns a lot of calories. So a lot of people do it to lose weight. and you cannot bulk up your legs. The only way to bulk up as a woman, and I get on my soapbox about this because I've heard so many women go, I don't want to lift weights, I'm going to get massive. The only way to bulk up as a woman is to go on an incredibly strict training regime where you're consuming 8,000 calories a day, probably taking all kinds of supplements and lifting incredibly heavy weights. If anything, doing most weight training and cycling will make your legs smaller. Not tiny, but it's definitely, it wouldn't be the other way.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to know. I think I saw that on your social media. That was seems like a common question people would ask before getting. Tell us about your gym, Cadence, in London. How'd you come up with the name, and just tell us about the business?
Good question. How did we come up with the name? So I'll answer that first. In indoor cycling in spin, how many times around a minute you move your legs on a screen is called RPM, revolutions per minute. Now that's also known as cadence. It's your cycling cadence or your running cadence. But what I quite liked about cadence is it's also a musical term. So you can have, imperfect cadences, playful cadence. That's from classical music. And quite simply, it can just be the cadence of music. So indoor cycling being the mixture of exercise and music, it seemed to fit perfectly. And it was literally one morning I woke up in bed and I said to my partner, I was like, Cadence, that's what and he went, perfect. And there was there wasn't a long list, there wasn't a short list, it just appeared. So
Nice.
Yeah, I like I said, I'd been teaching for a long time, and I found that my classes in different gyms were kind of always the most attended and the most popular. I don't mean to brag. They just people seemed to like the way I was teaching. Just to kind of to explain the way that I teach, kind of to touch on all the things we've talked about and the questions that you've asked about nuance and empathy. I teach in a way that it's accessible to everybody. And when you leave the class, you think, I could do most of that. And if I couldn't, it's just because that was my first time in the class. Whereas there are other ways of teaching where instructors are doing very, very difficult choreography, or they're moving their legs very, very, very fast, which to the majority of the population is physically impossible. And no matter how long you train for, you're not going to be able to do that because you're at a certain age or height or weight. And some things just aren't possible for everybody, which is why we need to teach in a way that still can be hard and still can have vibes, as people say, but is accessible. My mantra is everything I teach, everyone can do. And whether that will take you a couple of weeks or whether you kind of just need to find your position on the bike, whatever it is. And I always kind of say to people after class, I'm happy to work with you a little bit on that, or, just trust the process. We always say it takes 3 classes. So I'd been teaching in this way for a long time. And I mean, it's kind of, there's a huge scientific undertone and backing to all my programming, and everything that I do is evidence-based. Whereas a lot of people are getting on the bike and they're using the bike as a prop. And there's ridiculous videos going around social media. People always send me of people like doing ridiculous things, or like riding one-legged or doing the Macarena. But that's because it's based in truth. And people were getting intimidated and put off by indoor cycling classes. And I remember saying to people, oh yeah, I'm a spin instructor. And they'd go, oh, I hate spin. And at first I kind of got annoyed because I thought, hang on, if you said you were a gardener, and I went, I hate gardens. But then I thought, actually, they have a point, because they've been to unsafe, intimidating classes where they've walked in, been one of 80 people, they've not been welcomed personally, they've not been set up, they've not been asked, not intrusively, but is there anything that you want to tell me? They've not been reacted to within the class. They've sat at the back and thought, oh my goodness, I'm so intimidated, I hate this, and then they've left and gone, oh my goodness, that I never want to do spin again. So I wanted to change that. I wanted to prove and I wanted to show as many people as possible that that isn't indoor cycling. This Cadence is indoor cycling. And after 20 years of teaching, I was confident that I am the expert in this industry. And I didn't want to work for other people. I wanted to because although my classes were good, there were still other people doing different things. And I thought, what I want to do is open a studio that's community-based, that will welcome everyone, no matter their age, no matter their height, no matter their gender, no matter how they identify, no barriers at all, and make every single person feel welcomed and supported, and show them how good indoor cycling can be. So that's why I opened Cadence.
That's awesome, and the results have shown. I mean, you're doing so much great business, and I also wanted to ask you, what are some of your goals? Let's say 3 to 5 years. What are some of your goals for Cadence and the business and growing, and you personally?
A Cadence in every city in the world.
I mean, pretty cool.
I mean, maybe that's 10 years. The dream is to open more. I mean, there's a lot going on. Sort of at the moment, we've launched a lot of things this year which have been hugely exciting. So the first step would be to open another Cadence, but in order to do that, I would need investment, because the first one we did with a little bit of savings that I got from running a online gym in lockdown, and because I had no overheads, I saved that because I thought, if one day I want to put this into something. So we opened, but at the moment, Cadence is small. We don't have what, the massive gyms have. We don't have incredible changing rooms or a smoothie bar. We are all about substance and less about the style. And what I would love to do is still keep to that mantra, but open, a Cadence in a different location with investment, so that we could put time and effort into all the things that surround indoor cycling. And, I want more people to experience the Cadence way of riding. The dream would be to open one in the States. I would love to open one over there. I would love to open one, in places in Europe. That I would absolutely love, because I've seen that it works, and I've seen how it's transformed people. And people, they go, I didn't know that it could be like this. And, now we get people coming every single day completely addicted because they can see the results. So that would be incredible. I'm also, which is kind of just hot off the press, launching a YouTube channel.
Nice.
Thank you. Say again.
What went into that decision, if I may ask? What went into that decision to get into the YouTube realm?
So with teaching online, I've been doing this for a long time for a couple of companies, various different companies. Kaiser, you might have heard of. They make bikes, and they also have an app called The Ride. I've taught for Cycle Masters. I've taught for lots of different gyms online. And again, it was always the people that kind of kept coming back to my classes and going, "Hey, you're going to do any more classes? We love your classes." And I thought, we have a studio. My partner, my business partner, has a background in film and TV. So, he's incredibly adept at the camera side, the technical side. And we thought, why not do it ourselves? Again, it's going back to kind of like, I've always done it for other people, but this is the next step. We've got the studio to record in. And also it's kind of, I want to show people globally this way of riding, this way of instruction, and kind of let people enjoy these classes who, can't get to Cadence. So that's coming out in the next few weeks. I'm so excited about it. And the other thing is consultancy. Since kind of Cadence has done so well, and all these instructors that I've trained have kind of gone off across the world, we're now starting to get people saying, listen, I want to open a spin studio, but I've got the money, but I don't know enough. And actually, it's so lovely when people can put their hands up and say that. And we had an incredible client a few weeks ago, and she said, look, I'm a Pilates expert. I've got a great Pilates studio, and I want to open an indoor cycling studio. And I don't know where to begin. And it was so lovely being able to kind of say, this is brilliant, because it's always the people that it's the people that know that they need help and can admit that always have the most successful outcomes.
Exactly.
And I'm really, really excited to do a bit more of that, and hopefully kind of branch out again into the States, maybe into Europe, with doing that consultancy as well. So an exciting year ahead, I think.
That's awesome, and it sounds like you have a lot going on. And you mentioned you have a child or children from your story from earlier. How do you balance work life? Doing everything with consultancy and Cadence and indoor cycling, but also being a mom.
Good question. I think it's tough, but I'm so passionate about both sides of it. And in the very beginning, when I was going back to work after 6 weeks, we had to go back. We run the business, but my partner and I do everything together. So he would be at home with her, and I'd go off to teach and come back. And what's really the balance comes from not having a 9 to 5. The balance comes from being able to, at 4:00 on a Tuesday, say, let's go to the park. I mean, she's only 1 and we only have 1. So we're not overrun by them. But the balance comes. And I think that's why I wanted always to run my own business as well, because I might be out teaching 4 nights out of 5, but she's in bed, or, I might have to balance, we went to Dubai last year to train some instructors out there and to do some consultancy. And, we've got an incredible family. So she went and stayed with them. And it's just, I think being able to know if I really need to, I can be there for her at any time. That's what makes it a lot easier, because when you run your own business, you can say, right, we'll stay up and work from, 8 p.m. till midnight. And then tomorrow we could all go to the aquarium. So I think that's where the balance comes from. And when you love what you do, you don't mind working from 8 till midnight because you're passionate about it.
Very true. No, that makes a lot of sense. 2 things that are very important, and you're balancing both. And that's awesome. But Melissa, tell the audience and potential investors, where can they find your work? Where can they find your social channels? Where can they find you?
So there are 2 different websites you can head to. One is very simply melissapower.co.uk, and then cadenceindoorcycling.co.uk. My social media is @m.powered on Instagram, but head to melissapower.co.uk for everything. You can find everything there.
Awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing such an amazing story of how everything came to be. It's no secret why you're very successful, and the trajectory is skyrocketing up. So very excited to hear about things in the year ahead and the years ahead. And thank you for sharing your journey so far, Melissa. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every moment of it. It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.